Okay, so today I'm going to make a video on how to remove the stock steering wheel from a 2005 to 2006 Altima. This also works for 2004 to 2008 Maxima. We have a stock steering wheel here, kind of ratty. Replacing it with a carbon fiber, partial carbon fiber Nappa leather steering wheel. Let's see there, get it out in the light a little bit. So we will be messing with the airbag. We'll have to remove the airbag to take this out. So before we do that, we want to cut the power, remove the battery terminal. So we'll do that. And to give us a little bit more room now that the battery terminal is removed, we're going to pull off the clamshell off the steering column on the top and the bottom here. There's 3 to 4 screws underneath on the other side. And we'll just remove those. So the screws have been removed. We'll just take a flathead screwdriver in here through one of the cracks and separate that. All right, there's the top piece. Set that up there. And the bottom piece sometimes requires the tilt function to get it popped out. Just tilt up on the steering wheel and that pops right out. Here's the bottom piece. Okay, next we're going to have to come underneath the underside. Here's a little cover. Let's see if we can get there. Now you can see a little cover. You're going to peel that off. There'll be a 10mm bolt underneath there on both sides. That'll allow the airbag to pop out now. Once that little cover is removed, you'll expose the bolt. There's 2 of them on both sides. This is going to allow the airbag to come off. It's 12mm, so we have 2 of those. So I'm going to remove those next. All right, now that we've removed both of those 10mm bolts, as you're removing it, you can see it's getting a little bit more loose. Here we go. We have the airbag. That's going to come right off. Good. Now you'll see on the back there's 2 clips here. We have the battery cable unhooked here just for safety. I'm going to show you a way to go through and to get these off. I found a nice small flathead screwdriver. Works nicely to remove the clips without damaging anything. Here's that small screwdriver I was looking for. I'm going to come in through here from the top. Be very gentle. It's easy to break these clips. So the way you're going to want to come in is right through the back here. There's a nice little pry point. If you go through the front, you can break the plastic pretty easily. You're just going to come in the back here. Now the little safety clip is off. The plug will come right out. Good. Okay. Now that we're actually going to have to tear this wheel down pretty far down to the base because the replacement wheel doesn't have some of these extra metal additions here. We have some star head nuts. We're going to have the main one here and a couple little sub harnesses to remove. And this Torx I'm using is a T30. They're not on very tight. It was pretty easy to remove. I'm going to do both of those now. With both of those Torx removed, this frame is now quite loose. The one thing we do have to do is we're going to have to come in here and just remove that spade connector off of the housing. Good, we got that. And we're going to pull this out of the holder here. That should allow us to take this holder off. Now that we remove that spade connector off the housing here, behind both of those Torx screws, we have 2 springs. They'll actually probably fall off and come down the inside. There's a nice retainer. You can put those in right away just so you know where to You put it all back together again, they'll go in there easily. There's one more harness to remove here. We'll use a flathead there on the connector. And then we'll go and grab a Phillips and hit this screw and that one. And then finally down there. That should let us pull the shielding off the back here. Just working on the plastic shroud here. And we're at the point right now we really can't do much more with this steering wheel until it's off the car. Pay attention here on the spline of this nut here. You have an indicator. On the wheel there'll be another line as well. That'll help you match it up and make sure your steering wheel's aligned when you put it back on. You don't need a steering wheel puller for these cars. What you do need is I have a 19mm socket here and 1/2-inch drive, and I also have an extension just to bring it out from the face of the wheel to clear that. And it's going to take a little bit of torque to pull this thing off. So it wasn't too ugly. This is going to be the second steering wheel I've ever removed. We'll see how removing it from the splines goes. But we've got this on here. We're going to loosen it up and go to the next point. And this is about the ugliest part here. I put a little PB blaster on the spline just to try to lube it up a little bit. Really what you're going to be doing is putting your hands on the steering wheel, probably around like 9 and 3, and bracing your legs on the floorboards and giving a good tug back a couple times. Fortunately, since I'm hand holding the camera here, you can't see the fun that I had pulling that off. Actually grabbing up at the top of the wheel loosened things up for me, and it popped right off pretty quickly, about 5 pulls later. So now we have the steering wheel here. We can pull this plastic shroud off the back. We're going to see some of the exposed screws for some of the other plastics. We have, here we go. We're going to remove all these screws in the back. That's going to help the plastics come off. And we'll be putting our new wheel on pretty soon. All right, I brought both the wheels inside here to work on the countertop, just to be easier than switching them over in the car. We're going to remove all these screws we see on the back here and swap those plastics over to the new one. All 6 screws removed now. The plastics are just going to come right off. So we lost the bottom piece here. The side piece is off. We'll keep the harnesses intact. They'll stretch over from one side to the other. We'll swap over the new wheel. All right, wheels assembled again. We have the plastics on, and the harness just needs to be plugged in. Now I threaded the airbag harness through the lower portion of the wheel, right through here. Now we have to look at the clock spring this time. We have that indicator line there on the bolt that we're going to match it up with, but we also have to get this gray piece on the clock spring matched up with the hole in the top here. Plastic hole there. Okay, we have our lines all lined up here. The clock spring positioning pin right here in plastic, and when you have that lined up right, then your harness will come right in through. So we're going to plug that in. That's it, good. Now we push the wheel on pretty hard here, but it's going to tighten down a little bit more with the nut when we put the nut on. So you can feel a little bit of a play in between there until we put the nut on. Everything looks lined up pretty nicely. Next thing's going to be, we're going to put that black frame, that metal frame back on that has the 2 springs. Make sure you have the springs intact. Good, that's going to go on here. I'll bolt that up and we'll go from there. So find out applying pressure here in the middle as you're screwing in these torque bolts. Just makes it a little bit easier to compress the springs and helps you align it a little bit better. All right, now just make sure that you put the ground wire in here on the frame. We still have to plug this harness in, the Torx bolts. Now look at this, you're going to tighten this up. You actually slip the bottom part of this metal frame down in. Do that first. Apply pressure here in the middle. Now notice we've tightened them up. We still have that play. And that's actually your horn function. When you push in on the airbag, the center part of the steering wheel, that's what's going to allow your horn to go off. So don't worry about that being loose.